I don't shake hands with her. Ethan Caldwell's voice cut sharply through the polished marble of the boardroom, a sentence so abrupt it made the murmuring of the board members pause mid-laugh, their polished shoes squeaking lightly against the glossy floor as they tried to conceal the flicker of surprise crossing their faces. Jennifer Brooks stood at the entrance, the heels of her black pumps clicking softly against the tile as she carried her slim laptop case in one hand and a leather-bound binder in the other, the afternoon sunlight catching her dark hair in a halo-like sheen. She paused for a brief heartbeat, her eyes scanning the room, noting the smirks and sideways glances of the board members who had been quick to chuckle at her presence, the subtle exchange of whispers like static electricity in the air. The walls of the room, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows, reflected a stark, cold light that seemed to emphasize the sharp contrast between the sleek suits around the massive oak table and her own tailored navy blazer, simple yet commanding, a quiet assertion of authority that demanded recognition without a word. Jennifer inhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the room settle on her shoulders, but rather than faltering, she squared them, her gaze steady and unwavering, meeting Ethan's eyes directly with a calm that belied the intensity of the moment. The board, sensing the tension, tried to recover with forced laughter, the sound hollow against the glass and steel of the office, as if aware that the air had changed, that a subtle power shift had occurred the instant she had entered. A light hum from the air conditioning unit mingled with the faint scratching of pens against paper as Jennifer set her binder down on the table with deliberate care, the leather making a soft thud that seemed to resonate through the room, drawing all attention back to her. She tapped the edge of the binder lightly, a measured rhythm, signaling readiness, authority, and a calm confidence that contrasted sharply with the amusement still lingering on the faces of the board members. Her hand rested for a moment on the top of the binder, fingers brushing the smooth surface, grounding herself as Ethan shifted slightly in his chair, the gesture small but telling, a twitch in his usually impenetrable composure. Jennifer's voice when she spoke was measured, clear and unwavering, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. I am Jennifer Brooks, CEO of Horizon Innovations. I am here to present our next funding round. The room fell even quieter, the board members now caught between disbelief and intrigue, the sound of a phone vibrating quietly somewhere at the far end of the table momentarily breaking the silence. Ethan's jaw tightened, his fingers drumming a slow, impatient beat on the polished surface of the table, yet there was a flicker in his eyes, a momentary crack in the armor he had always worn to assert dominance. Jennifer stepped fully into the light, the afternoon sun glinting off the metal accents of the conference room, highlighting the edges of her figure as if framing her as the centerpiece of the unfolding drama, and she set her laptop down with precise motion, the screen illuminating her focused expression. The room seemed to hold its breath, every chair, every paperweight, every swivel of a pen suspended in a delicate balance, as Jennifer opened the binder, revealing meticulously organized slides and charts, each page a testament to preparation, competence, and unwavering purpose, the numbers inside hinting at billions, a quiet declaration that spoke louder than the laughter that had preceded it. Her eyes, steady and unwavering, scanned the faces of the board members, reading subtle micro-expressions, gauging who might underestimate her and who might recognize the quiet force she represented. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, almost in defiance of the tension, marking seconds that seemed to stretch into minutes, each tick a drumbeat in the symphony of authority she had brought with her. The board's laughter had long since faded, replaced by an uneasy stillness, the echo of Ethan's initial words lingering in the room like a shadow that refused to dissipate. Jennifer inhaled again, letting the calm strength in her chest radiate outward, her posture tall, movements deliberate, and her gaze unwavering silently, demanding respect in a room that had begun with mockery, her very presence challenging the assumptions that had led to that first dismissive statement. Every subtle movement, the slight tilt of her head, the controlled breathing, the soft placement of her hands, spoke volumes more than the words themselves, a testament to poise, preparation, and the quiet authority that no laughter could diminish. And as she began to speak in detail about the vision for Horizon Innovations, the room, still tense, began to pivot, attention focused entirely on the figure's strategy, and the undeniable confidence she radiated, marking the start of a confrontation where intellect and preparation would quietly demand recognition over status and mockery, and the air itself seemed to hum with anticipation, each breath and eye movement a part of the cinematic unfolding of power and respect in the high-rise boardroom of New York City. Jennifer Brooks took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the high-rise boardroom settle around her as she prepared to present the vision she had cultivated over the past 5 years. A vision born from countless late nights in a modest apartment and the relentless pursuit of innovation that had defined her career. Her hands, steady and deliberate, opened the binder to the first page, the crisp sound of paper sliding against leather echoing softly in the room, commanding attention in a space that had moments ago been filled with dismissive laughter. She began to outline the history of Horizon Innovations, tracing its growth from a small startup to a company recognized across the financial technology sector for disruptive thinking and strategic insight. Her voice was measured and clear, each word carefully chosen to convey confidence, competence, and unwavering focus. She described the market analysis, the competitive landscape, and the meticulously calculated strategies that had allowed her team to secure partnerships with international investors and technology leaders. As she spoke, her eyes scanned the boardroom, noting the subtle shift in expressions. Some members leaned forward, eyebrows raised, pens poised over notepads, while others exchanged glances that betrayed the surprise of realizing that the person they had underestimated was commanding the room with authority and clarity. Jennifer moved seamlessly from one slide to the next, the digital screen illuminating her determined features, highlighting the calm precision in her gestures and the poised articulation of her ideas. She referenced case studies, statistical models, and projected financial growth, presenting data with a balance of technical accuracy and accessible explanation, ensuring that each person in the room could grasp the implications and the potential for substantial returns. Her presence was magnetic, not through force or volume, but through a quiet intensity that drew attention and demanded respect, a testament to the years she had spent honing her expertise and building credibility through results rather than words alone. The light from the city skyline behind the windows cast long shadows across the polished surfaces of the table, accentuating the contrast between her composed demeanor and the earlier moments of derision from the board. Jennifer's pacing was subtle but purposeful, walking the perimeter of the room just enough to engage directly with every member, making eye contact, acknowledging nods of understanding, and subtly reinforcing her authority without confrontation. The energy in the room shifted imperceptibly, a collective acknowledgement of competence replacing the earlier mockery. She introduced the core funding plan with an explanation of how Horizon Innovations would leverage existing assets to attract the commitment of high-profile investors, detailing risk management strategies and projected returns in a manner that was both persuasive and grounded. Each point was reinforced with evidence, her language precise and articulate, ensuring that even the most skeptical members of the board could not dismiss the proposal without careful consideration. As Jennifer concluded the first segment of her presentation, she allowed a moment of silence to settle over the room, letting the weight of her achievements and the clarity of her plan resonate with everyone present. The boardroom, once alive with subtle derision, had transformed into a space of attentive focus, the earlier laughter replaced by concentrated listening, a silent acknowledgement that the woman standing before them was not only prepared but commanding the respect she had earned through intellect, preparation, and the quiet authority that came from years of experience and relentless dedication to excellence. The room remained charged with a quiet intensity as Jennifer Brooks continued to guide the board members through the finer points of her funding proposal, her tone steady, deliberate, and unwavering. She referenced key partnerships, demonstrated through slides that glimmered on the large screen, showing growth trajectories and strategic expansions that were both ambitious and meticulously calculated. Her gestures were precise, pointing to graphs that illustrated projected revenue streams, investor commitments, and market penetration statistics, each one reinforcing the depth of her preparation and the reliability of her projections. The board members shifted in their seats, some leaning forward, others exchanging glances that carried unspoken recognition, the earlier amusement fading into attentive curiosity as the implications of Jennifer's plan became increasingly clear. Jennifer moved fluidly across the room, making subtle eye contact with each member, her voice modulating to emphasize crucial points, yet never rising above calm authority, a cadence that carried both expertise and measured command. Ethan Caldwell, sitting at the head of the table, crossed his arms, the tight set of his jaw betraying a flicker of tension that had not been present before. The polished surfaces of the conference room reflected the sunlight streaming through the skyscraper windows, casting long, deliberate shadows that seemed to underscore the contrast between expectation and performance, mockery and mastery. Jennifer described the allocation of the $3 billion funding, outlining how each portion was strategically targeted to accelerate product development, enhance technology infrastructure, and expand international presence, framing each decision with rationale grounded in market research and demonstrated outcomes from prior initiatives. She emphasized risk mitigation strategies, ensuring the board understood that every potential variable had been analyzed and accounted for, her explanations precise yet accessible, leaving no room for dismissal. As she navigated complex financial models and illustrated projected returns, the boardroom grew quieter, the clinking of coffee cups and faint rustle of papers the only remnants of movement in the space. Jennifer's posture remained upright, shoulders squared, projecting a quiet but undeniable authority that drew attention away from status and toward substance. Each slide she presented was accompanied by a concise, clear narrative, weaving together data, strategic insight, and vision in a manner that highlighted her unique capacity to not only understand but anticipate the dynamics of high-stakes investment. Ethan's expression shifted subtly, a recognition flickering across his features that this was not a routine presentation, nor was the woman before him merely a figurehead. She was a leader whose intellect and preparation demanded consideration and respect. The collective energy in the room transformed gradually from skepticism to engagement, the initial laughter replaced by thoughtful contemplation, each board member now fully absorbed in the details of the plan. The trajectory of the discussion, a testament to Jennifer's ability to command attention through competence and presence alone. She concluded this segment by pausing, letting the weight of the information settle, allowing the room to absorb the magnitude of her proposal. The $3 billion funding round framed not as a gamble but as a calculated, inevitable outcome based on expertise, vision, and meticulous preparation, the space itself seeming to acknowledge the shift in authority, the balance of power subtly but unmistakably redefined by her clarity, confidence, and unyielding composure. Jennifer Brooks shifted slightly, adjusting the binder on the polished table as she moved into the next phase of her presentation, the room still tense from the detailed overview she had just delivered. The sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows painted long patterns across the marble floor, highlighting the subtle expressions of the board members who were now leaning forward, their initial amusement replaced by a mixture of curiosity and careful consideration. She outlined specific investor commitments, speaking with precision about the institutions and high-net-worth individuals who had already pledged substantial portions of the funding, providing confidence that the $3 billion target was not speculative, but secured with tangible agreements. Her voice carried a calm authority that seemed to settle the scattered murmurs in the room, and her gestures were deliberate, indicating exact figures on charts that reflected conservative yet ambitious projections. Jennifer explained the strategic timing of each tranche of funding, demonstrating an understanding of both market cycles and investor expectations, and how each segment of capital would be allocated to maximize operational efficiency, technological innovation, and international expansion. As she continued, her gaze remained steady on Ethan Caldwell, noting the subtle narrowing of his eyes, the faint shift in posture that suggested a recalibration of his previous assumptions. She moved to a slide highlighting past performance metrics, showing steady growth, successful exits, and measurable impact in the fintech sector, reinforcing the credibility that had already begun to replace doubt in the minds of those around the table. Her language was formal yet accessible, each term chosen for clarity, every sentence constructed to lead the audience through complex financial and operational concepts with ease. The board members, previously confident in their mockery, now took notes and asked concise clarifying questions. Each inquiry met with Jennifer's composed, thorough responses that reflected both her mastery of the subject matter and her anticipation of potential concerns. The room's atmosphere shifted from one of subtle derision to attentive engagement, a recognition that the woman at the head of the table was not merely presenting a plan, but demonstrating expertise and foresight that demanded respect. Jennifer continued to interweave narrative context with quantitative data, ensuring that the story of Horizon Innovation's trajectory was as compelling as the numerical evidence supporting it. Each slide transition, each point emphasized, built a rhythm that guided the audience through an unfolding understanding of both the company's potential and Jennifer's leadership. Ethan Caldwell's posture straightened imperceptibly, his focus now visibly engaged, as he processed the implications of the detailed, confident, and meticulously structured presentation before him. The subtle tension in the room, once dominated by skepticism and light laughter, had transformed into focused attention, the shift marked by careful observation, thoughtful gestures, and the quiet acknowledgement that Jennifer's authority and preparation were unmatched in the space. Every pause, every measured explanation, allowed the audience to fully absorb the strategy, the scale of the funding, and the confidence she exuded, ensuring that the narrative of capability and vision was as persuasive as the financial reality she outlined, leaving no room for dismissal and reinforcing the undeniable presence of leadership in the room. The atmosphere in the boardroom shifted palpably as Jennifer Brooks continued, her words slicing through the lingering skepticism like a steady beam of light. Ethan Caldwell's smirk had faded to a thin line, his hands resting on the polished oak table as he attempted to mask the flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Board members who had laughed quietly among themselves now leaned forward, pens hovering above notepads, eyes fixed on Jennifer with a mixture of intrigue and cautious respect. Jennifer presented the projected impact of the $3 billion funding, articulating each segment with precise timing, explaining how allocations for research, global expansion, and technological innovation were designed to maximize efficiency while mitigating risk. Her narrative wove together empirical evidence with strategic foresight, creating a cadence that held the attention of even the most skeptical members. She paused occasionally, allowing key points to resonate, her gaze sweeping the room to capture every subtle expression, noting the gradual recognition of the depth of her preparation. The sunlight continued to streak across the room, highlighting the edges of her silhouette and the crisp lines of her suit, emphasizing the contrast between her composed authority and the earlier levity of the board. Jennifer referenced prior successful funding rounds, industry benchmarks, and detailed investor commitments, presenting each with clarity that left no room for doubt. Ethan shifted slightly in his seat, a subtle movement that betrayed a growing awareness of Jennifer's command over both data and narrative, a recognition that her presence was redefining the dynamics of the room. She moved through slides with careful precision, each click revealing a visual that complemented her spoken points, creating an immersive experience that guided the board through complex financial scenarios with ease. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the projector and the faint rustle of papers, the previous laughter and casual murmurs replaced by attentive consideration. Jennifer's tone remained calm and measured, her voice neither raised nor strained, yet carrying a quiet intensity that commanded attention. She referenced projected timelines, potential challenges, and contingency plans, each detail reinforcing the credibility and authority she exuded, and the meticulous preparation behind every recommendation. The board members, previously confident in their dismissal, now processed the full weight of the presentation, their reactions measured, reflecting the internal acknowledgement of expertise and foresight they could not ignore. Jennifer's eyes met Ethan's briefly, the exchange subtle but meaningful, conveying assurance and resolve, a silent affirmation of the competence and confidence she had cultivated. As she moved to summarize the key takeaways, the energy in the room had transformed, the tension now replaced by engaged focus, every individual absorbing the implications of the strategy and the undeniable capability of the leader standing before them, her presence commanding both attention and respect without a single gesture of force, her authority established purely through preparation, clarity, and unyielding composure. Jennifer Brooks exhaled slowly, allowing herself a quiet moment to observe the subtle transformation within the boardroom, as the earlier tension began to shift into a reflective stillness. The sunlight filtering through the high-rise windows cast a soft, warm glow on her face, accentuating the calm determination in her eyes and the composed lines of her suit. She lowered her hands to rest lightly on the edge of the polished oak table, the leather-bound binder now closed in front of her, signaling a pause, a space for the room to absorb the weight of her presentation and the clarity of her vision. Ethan Caldwell leaned back in his chair, his usual confidence replaced with a contemplative frown, fingers steepled together as he considered the implications of the meticulously laid-out strategy before him. The board members, too, had fallen silent, their pens resting idle on notepads, eyes tracing Jennifer's posture and the calm precision of her gestures, a collective acknowledgement forming in the unspoken language of the room that competence and preparation commanded authority beyond status or expectation. Jennifer's gaze swept the space, noting each subtle shift, each minute adjustment in body language that reflected the growing recognition of her capability, and the resonance of her leadership. The air in the room seemed to stretch, a palpable quiet punctuated only by the faint hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of the city below, a cinematic moment of suspended anticipation that emphasized the contrast between the initial dismissal and the present contemplation. She allowed the silence to linger, her breathing steady and controlled, eyes meeting the farthest corners of the room as if to include every mind, every unspoken thought, drawing attention to the quiet authority she embodied. The reflection of the city skyline danced across the glass walls behind her, the juxtaposition of the outside world's movement with the hushed, focused energy inside reinforcing the gravity of the moment, a subtle reminder of the stakes involved and the scale of influence her leadership carried. Jennifer's posture remained poised, her expression composed, radiating a confidence rooted not in assertion or volume, but in the undeniable clarity and thoroughness of her preparation, the depth of insight she had cultivated, and the integrity of her strategy. The boardroom, once a space of light laughter and subtle derision, now felt suspended in a contemplative pause, each individual internally measuring, recalibrating their assumptions, and absorbing the implications of the presentation. The subtle sounds of pen tapping and chair adjustments underscored the reflective quiet, a rhythm that matched the measured cadence of Jennifer's own breath. The room seemingly synchronized to the poise and calm she projected. In this moment, the power dynamic had shifted imperceptibly yet irrevocably, the earlier mockery now replaced by thoughtful observation, the silent recognition that competence, preparation, and quiet authority could command respect and attention without force or confrontation, leaving an indelible impression that resonated far beyond the immediate words spoken or slides presented, marking a turning point in the energy and perception within the boardroom. Jennifer Brooks lifted her gaze from the last slide, allowing the weight of the room's attention to settle fully upon her. Each board member now silent, pens still, and expressions reflecting the undeniable realization that the vision she had presented was not only meticulously planned but imminently achievable. The subtle hum of the city beyond the glass walls seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the quiet acknowledgement of competence and foresight that filled the space. She reached for her phone with deliberate motion, tapping a sequence to confirm final investor commitments, the screen lighting her face with a soft, purposeful glow that highlighted the calm authority in her eyes and the steady rhythm of her breath. Ethan Caldwell, who had been the most dismissive at the outset, now leaned forward, the tension in his shoulders replaced with an almost imperceptible shift toward recognition, the slight tightening of his jaw conveying the dawning awareness that the assumptions he had held about both her and the potential outcome were incomplete. One by one, the board members exchanged subtle glances, the realization spreading quietly that Jennifer's $3 billion plan was no longer hypothetical. It was solid, tangible, and fully supported by credible, high-profile investors. She allowed a moment of pause, her calm presence anchoring the room as the impact of the information sunk in, the previous underestimation of her capacity now replaced by measured acknowledgement of her strategic acumen. The sunlight, softened by the late afternoon haze, cast long streaks across the conference table, glinting off the polished surfaces and illuminating the contrast between the earlier derision and the present attention, emphasizing the transformation in the atmosphere. Jennifer continued, articulating final logistical considerations and timelines with clarity and precision, each word measured, deliberate, and designed to reinforce the credibility and completeness of her proposal. The board members listened intently, the subtle nods and brief exchanges of understanding among them signaling a collective recognition of her authority and foresight. Ethan's hand hovered over his glass of water, pausing as he considered the evidence before him, the prior mockery and confidence replaced with contemplation and respect, the initial resistance to her presence dissolving under the undeniable reality of her preparation and command. Jennifer's posture remained composed, shoulders squared, movements controlled yet natural, conveying not only assurance in her plan, but also the quiet confidence that she was a leader capable of guiding both vision and execution to successful completion. The hum of discussion that had once been filled with undercurrents of doubt and subtle laughter was now replaced with attentive focus, a silent testament to the power of competence and careful preparation, to command attention and respect without the need for force or confrontation. As Jennifer concluded, the room remained still, the moment lingering in a suspended quiet, each individual absorbing the scope of her achievement, the clarity of her strategy, and the subtle but unmistakable shift in authority, marking a definitive turning point in perception and acknowledgement within the boardroom. A quiet affirmation that mastery and preparation had irrevocably altered the dynamics of power in the space. Jennifer Brooks closed her laptop gently, letting the finality of the presentation settle over the boardroom, a serene smile tugging at the corners of her lips as she observed the subtle shift in the room's energy. Ethan Caldwell's expression had softened, the tension in his posture easing into a reluctant acknowledgement, a flicker of respect reflecting in the steadying of his gaze, his fingers resting lightly on the polished table as he absorbed the magnitude of what had been achieved. Board members who had initially whispered and chuckled now exchanged quiet, measured glances, the laughter replaced by nods of recognition and thoughtful consideration. The collective understanding that the $3 billion funding round was secured and credible settling across the room like a tangible weight. Jennifer allowed herself a moment to inhale the calm, her chest rising slowly, the soft click of her heels against the marble floor as she straightened, conveying a quiet, unassuming authority. She spoke with measured clarity, her voice calm yet compelling, outlining the next steps for implementation, emphasizing transparency, accountability, and the importance of collaboration across teams, reinforcing not only the strategic plan but the integrity with which it would be executed. Ethan shifted in his chair, a subtle exhalation audible only to those closest, signaling an internal acknowledgement that his assumptions about capability and leadership had been reevaluated. Jennifer's presence had quietly reframed the room, her composed demeanor and meticulous preparation now commanding attention without confrontation, demonstrating that respect could be earned through mastery, foresight, and unwavering professionalism. The sunlight streaming through the expansive windows highlighted the lines of concentration and contemplation across the faces of the board members, the reflections in the polished table surfaces capturing subtle gestures of acknowledgement and shifting perspectives. Jennifer moved to the side of the room, gesturing lightly toward the projected slides that remained illuminated, summarizing the key outcomes with precision, reinforcing the strategic and financial logic that underpin the funding, and ensuring clarity on the implementation process. The board absorbed each point, the quiet nods and attentive postures reflecting a transition from initial derision to engaged recognition, the atmosphere charged with a new understanding of authority founded in competence and preparation, rather than hierarchy or intimidation. Ethan leaned back slightly, his gaze meeting Jennifer's with a mixture of contemplation and unspoken respect, the earlier rigidity replaced by an acknowledgement of the leadership she had demonstrated. The room remained still, the only sounds being the soft rustle of paper and the quiet hum of air conditioning, the silence underscoring the transformation in perception and power dynamics that had occurred without a single raised voice or overt confrontation. Jennifer's calm smile, measured gestures, and poised stance communicated both confidence and reassurance, signaling that the plan was not only feasible but grounded in expertise and ethical execution, leaving a lasting impression of integrity and capability that resonated far beyond the immediate conversation. As she took a step back and allowed the board to reflect on the information, the energy in the room had fully shifted, the focus now entirely on the substance of her strategy, the $3 billion funding, and the quiet but undeniable authority she embodied, marking the moment as a definitive turning point in perception, respect, and acknowledgement of her leadership. Jennifer Brooks stepped out of the boardroom and onto the wide corridor, the soft hum of the office lighting blending with the distant sounds of the city below, creating a serene, almost cinematic backdrop to the conclusion of a day that had begun with tension and skepticism. Her heels clicked lightly against the polished marble floor as she walked with measured pace, each step echoing subtly in the quiet space, a rhythm that mirrored the steady confidence she carried within. Sunlight poured through the tall windows lining the hallway, casting long, deliberate shadows across the walls and emphasizing the architectural precision of the space, the interplay of light and form reflecting the clarity and structure that had defined her presentation. Jennifer's shoulders remained squared, her posture composed, and yet there was a softness in her expression, a quiet satisfaction in the knowledge that her preparation, integrity, and vision had spoken more powerfully than any argument could. The boardroom behind her had shifted, laughter and derision replaced with contemplative focus, a subtle acknowledgement from Ethan Caldwell and the other members that her authority was grounded not in status, but in skill, foresight, and careful execution. She paused briefly by the expansive glass panels overlooking the city skyline, watching the movement of cars and pedestrians below, their energy contrasting with the stillness she felt within, a reminder of both the scale of the world she influenced and the precision with which she navigated it. Her hand brushed lightly against the smooth surface of the railing, a tactile grounding in the moment, allowing herself to reflect on the transformation that had occurred within the room she had left behind. Each decision she had presented, each chart, each carefully articulated point had contributed to a subtle but undeniable shift in perception, the power dynamic redefined by clarity and competence, rather than confrontation. As she continued walking, Jennifer considered the implications of the funding she had secured, the projects it would enable, and the team she would guide, each thought grounded in both strategy and ethical responsibility. The corridor stretched before her, empty but for her presence, offering a rare moment of solitude and reflection after the intensity of engagement, a space where the impact of her efforts could settle, appreciated only in quiet contemplation. Her pace remained deliberate, her gaze forward, and yet she allowed herself the briefest exhale, a release of the subtle tension that had accompanied the presentation, knowing that her work had shifted not only financial trajectories but also the perspectives of those who had doubted her at the start. The sunlight continued to shift as the afternoon moved toward evening, bathing the hallway in a golden warmth that seemed to mirror the calm satisfaction in her posture and expression, a visual reflection of the resolution achieved through intellect, preparation, and quiet authority. Jennifer reached the end of the corridor and paused, allowing the city view to fill her sight, the distant movement of people and vehicles a subtle reminder of the broader world she influenced. She adjusted her blazer with a smooth motion, the sound of fabric and the soft click of her heels completing the rhythm of her walk, a cinematic cadence that underscored both accomplishment and calm. For a moment, the world felt suspended, the corridor, the skyline, and her presence aligning in a quiet harmony that captured the essence of a leader who had transformed skepticism into respect, and uncertainty into acknowledgement, leaving a lasting impression that needed no further words, the silence and stillness serving as their own affirmation of authority, preparation, and the undeniable impact of her vision. Disclaimer: the stories shared on this channel are fictional and created purely for entertainment purposes, as well as to convey lessons about human behavior and interactions, regardless of race, religion, or background, promoting a life of equality and compassion. Any resemblance to real events, people, or places is purely coincidental,